Folks, I'm looking at the midterm questions right now. Maybe you can see the reflection of the questions in my glasses if you really zoom in. There's 10 possible questions, it looks like, and you're going to get 5. Chapter 8, Chapter 2, Chapter 6, Chapter 8, Chapter 4, Chapter 2, Chapter 7, Chapter 5, Chapter 5, Chapter 5. Those are where the questions come from. You are welcome and encouraged to open the book during the exam. I'm looking at the questions now. So, I'll give you some clues. Salutary neglect. Before you begin the exam, Google that term, salutary neglect. S-A-L-U-T-A-R-Y, neglect, N-E-G-L-E-T. It's this basic idea that the British left the Americans to their own devices, and during that time, the Americans became more independent. That is a possible term you might see on one of these questions. The word radical is going to come up on one of the questions, potentially, for you, in terms of the politics of the American Revolution. The word radical is. So if you want to think a little bit before you begin the exam about the radicalism or the philosophy of the revolution, I think that would be helpful. There's a question about the War of 1812, causes, outcomes. There's a question about the settlement and that experience of English settlement on the American continent and their interactions with natives and their struggles to do so successfully. There's a question about the 7 Years' War and its effect on the American colonists. There's a question about slavery and its arc, and that goes to Chapter 8 from this week. So what happened with slavery? Why did it persist on the American continent? There's a question here about the Constitutional Convention. What the heck happened there? What problems did it solve? What problems did it not solve? That's a question you might get. There's a question about asking you to compare Hamilton and Jefferson. I'm giving you the clues of what to do some research here. There's a little twist to that, but I'll let you encounter that if you get it. And then there's a question about why slavery only persisted in the South, and those colonies too, or in the Caribbean, and how it came to the South but mostly stayed in the South. Why is that? Why didn't it root in the North? So you just got a preview of all the questions. I need you to open the book during this. This is an open book exam. It is just 2 hours. And I do that not to put any kind of pressure on you. I think for most of you, an hour will be sufficient. But I want you to experience what it's like to sit down and take a timed exam. Obviously, you have that in high school, but in the college setting, I'd like you to sort of get an approximate experience of that too. So that's why it's timed. And I also kind of like the idea that you're going to do it in one sitting and just kind of be done with it. You don't have to worry about it all weekend. You've got other work to do too. So one shot, sit down, make sure you're not going to be interrupted for a good 90 minutes at a minimum, I would say, and take the exam. Leave the ChatGPT at home. It's only going to hurt you. Leave the Grammarly at home. I was listening to music this weekend while I was working, and I stumbled across this artist, Sky Ferreira, I think her name is. And I don't know anything about this artist. She does vocals on this track that I really like from a different band from like 10 years ago. Anyway, I was just reading an interview with her, as one does on a Saturday night at 11 p.m. And she said that this other artist, who I'm also very familiar with, and you might be too, Brian Eno, gave her advice one time. And he said, just write lyrics like you talk. And she said that was such critical advice. She thought her ideas were so simple, but she's a fairly popular artist even still here in 2024. Meaning, like, your authentic self, your real self, wherever you're at, is so much better than your fake self. And that's what so many responses end up looking like with ChatGPT or Grammarly, these other tools. These tools can be powerful research tools. These can be useful. These can help your writing. Use these tools and experiment with them. But don't do it, right, in terms of a final essay when you don't exactly know what you're talking about. Don't use that as your primary means of learning, because it just approximates learning. It can spit out what looks like learning while insulating you from actually learning. So just wrestle with these questions would be my advice to you. It would be far better to do that, and your grade will likely be higher as a result, because I just want to hear what you know and what you don't know. Telling me what you don't know is so useful to me, because then I can give you feedback and tell you what you're missing. But pretending to be an expert informed by the AI chatbot leaves me in this awkward position as the instructor of trying to determine what's the AI, what do you know and what you don't know, and it's really hard to tell, right? And so there's lots of sort of zeros and low scores that dot this, because it's hard to tell because it's so obviously the chatbot. So be your authentic self. Write your responses. Open the book, close the chatbot, and I'll see you at the end of the week.